I have the pleasure today to speak with a gentleman who is joining us all the way from Brisbane, and I'll give him the chance to introduce himself. Hi, Emeka, how are you today?
Hello, Mo. Thank you. How are you?
Good, good. Tell us a little bit about yourself so that those watching can know a little bit about who you are and what you do before we go into more of what we're talking about today.
Excellent. My name is Emeka Edwin-Nweze. I am the CEO and founder of Neticare, which is an organization in Brisbane, Queensland, in Australia. The organization has existed for the last 5 years, 4 to 5 years, just about now. I operate that. It's a healthcare service provider where our model is to provide holistic health service supports to people in the community with lifelong disabilities, chronic conditions, and chronic conditions, and subacute conditions as well. The whole idea for us is to ensure that people can find and get all their services delivered under the one roof across Queensland. And so, and we've expanded into other states, but the predominantly I had a vision of unifying services, healthcare services under the one roof, where people wouldn't need to be running around to different service providers to get their health needs met. That's been kind of my recent part of my journey. Prior to this, I was working in the Royal Australian Air Force as an aircraft maintenance engineer, providing licensed maintenance engineer work to the C-17, which was the 36th Squadron of the Air Force, the Australian Air Force. Did that work for about 7, ongoing to 8 years, I believe it was, close to. And I finished up because it was a very interesting environment to work in. Very, very challenging. Not that I couldn't handle the work. I have the resilience to handle the work, but certainly it was quite a toxic culture, quite a toxic environment to be within. And I learned a whole lot from that experience. Not specifically what kind of leader I wanted to be if I was ever given the opportunity to be a leader, which I'm now thankful I have the opportunity of leading almost 700 staff members across both Queensland and Tasmania. So it's been quite a journey for me.
Wow, that is indeed quite a journey. So let's try to break that down into a few things. You worked with for the army, and then once you finish, you thought about. Did you think specifically about going to business straight after, or you even started thinking about it before you stopped working for the army? Tell us a bit more how that transition took
Yeah,
place.
so when I dropped out of the Air Force and I discharged, some interesting part of that journey, they try to give me a dishonorable discharge, and I actually didn't even have to fight it, but it just didn't work. And there's a bit of story behind that, because I just kind of stood against everything that the culture was in the Air Force, which made it quite challenging for the people who I worked with. I wanted to manage who I was, and that didn't quite fit into their box. But one of the straws that broke the camel's back was when I first joined the Air Force. My entire ambition of joining the Air Force was to be a pilot, was to fly. And so I was really, really motivated to fly. And when I initially joined, they said to me, look, there are no piloting jobs available at the moment. But look, if you take what's available now, we can see that obviously you've passed all of the criteria to fly. But if you take the option that's available to you now, in about 3-4 years, you can quite easily switch. You're quite young, and so it'd be good for you to get the experience. And at the time, I think I was 20, just turned 20 when I was given that offer. So, and I thought, sure, I'll take it. Since it sounds like a really fun plan to do that. And so, yeah, I think I was just shy of 20. So I took that position, and then I'd done my service time for about 6 years, going on the 7th year. I then went back in and tried to do everything I needed to do to become a pilot. And there was a reason I didn't quite stop at that 4-year mark. It had to go up to the 5-6 year, 6th year. And there was some really difficult cultural things I had to navigate through that made it very difficult for me. And but when I got to that point and I went and did the testings, there's a whole lot of metric testings that are evaluations that they do for you if you want to be an Air Force pilot in the Australian Air Force. And I went through all of them and I passed them. And there was this little obstacle that I needed to get through, which was having my squadron sign me off to release me, because essentially they have to be willing to release me to go be a pilot. My superior at the time, who was kind of in charge of me, had said to me something very interesting that I'll never forget. I asked him, seemed to have been dodging me for a while. And so finally I cornered him in his office and said, hey, listen, I really need you to sign this paperwork. I need to go. I need to go do this. Like, this is what I'm passionate about doing. And he said to me, look, I don't really want to sign it. I don't think you'll make it. I don't think you can fly the plane. I don't think you can. I just think it'll be a waste of our money and our resources for you to go do that, because we don't think you are competent, even at what you do right now, to do that. And I thought, wow, okay. Never mind that I passed all the testings for it. I just needed to sign the paper to release me. And then he went on to make this comment. He said, besides, I would not be the first to sign such paperwork. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, you are where you're from. You're like you guys. And I was like, what does that mean? Kind of pointed to his skin and said, well, like, we've never really had you guys fly in our Air Force before. So I'm not sure if I want to be one of the first ones to sign that such paperwork. And I thought, how bizarre. Just the year before, they had signed paperwork for a lady who was, I don't think she was very good at her job either, but the Air Force needed to meet the quota for how many females it allowed to fly and how many females went into certain positions. But here I was passing all the criterias and they wouldn't sign me because they don't let my people fly their planes. And I thought, geez, I'm an Australian, I've literally, I can't be in the Air Force if I don't have a Australian citizenship.
Yes.
Right. But I think for me, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. It was quite infuriating that day. Just kind of, I stood there in shock for a moment and went, I don't even know what I can say to fight this. Already I was seen as the young, dumb, ignorant. If there was a name, they referred to me as that. And so it was going to be a very difficult uphill battle. There's a whole lot more to the story, but essentially that's what broke the camel's back for me. And I thought, well, screw it, I'm not going to do that anymore. So when I got out, I made it my mission to get a pilot license. So I went to do that and fly and started flying. Towards the end of my training, I got to a position where I was like, okay, well, I think I want to go into piloting as a career, and what that is going to look like is actually going to be quite good to see what that looks like. But then COVID happened, right? Like COVID was like well and truly on the way, and a whole series of things had kind of lined up. When I was flying, I thought, well, I want to do something so I can feed my family, because flying is expensive and I need to work if I'm going to feed my family. So I went, a friend of mine introduced me to working in the disability sector here in Australia, as he was a manager in one of the companies. And so it was working within that space that I kind of, I was working on the ground, working directly with clients, really supporting them and really kind of enjoying it. I went sideways a little bit working in the youth space, working with young people, which I really enjoyed, because before that I was a youth pastor as well. So it was all quite an interesting thing for me. But a little bit of an evolution started through that process, where it was like, okay, I'm really enjoying working with these people, but I think it could be so much better than the way it's currently arranged. The organization of it is not very practical. People are running everywhere to get their services. And so it was kind of really a need that I saw and thought maybe I could do something about filling it. But at the same time, I was like, well, I want to be a pilot. That's really what I'm more interested in. But, maybe I could do something about this.
Yes.
Well, when COVID happened and, it seemed like pilots, there was not going to be any flying for a moment.
For a
I thought,
while.
well, maybe it's my opportunity to try something else and see what might happen. And so one day I was at work at my youth job, and I was saying to a colleague who I was working with at the time, I said, I've been thinking I want to start something small maybe. And I just I'm not even sure that I know how to start. And she then, said, I was thinking about the same thing actually. And here are all the documents that I put together for starting. And I took that and I ran with it, and I've been running since.
Wow.
um, fourth year now. We're going into the fifth, and yeah, I've been running since with it, and it's been pretty an epic
So,
journey.
so that's conversation with your colleague, that's the thing that sort of triggered you. Say, well, this is this is what I want to do now. And even though you were started to think from a previous to that, seeing how things are organized, you could do better, and then bang, that conversation happened, and say, okay, did you go with that person or did you go on your own?
I did go on my own. Interestingly enough, I did actually invite her at the time. It's actually quite funny.
Yeah,
I invited her at the time. I was like, "Well, hey, listen, you've done all this paperwork. You've done the research to get started." I
yeah,
said, "Why don't we just start together?"
yes,
And I guess like one of the key things I've kind of learned in business, like business is very risky. It's like going from having, a solid paycheck that
yes.
you are guaranteed every fortnight or every
Good
week
night.
or every month to
Yeah,
like doing something that there is no guarantee of when you get the next dollar in the bank, really.
that's right.
And so, I identified that in her quite early, and she said no, maybe a bit later on. And quite frankly, it was quite interesting because I was actually offering her a CFO position at the time,
Mm.
but like you're offering someone a CFO position
There's no
over
money.
zero staff and zero, um, and that because that was her background. But yeah, that conversation kind of sparked like just kind of gave me the motivation of like this is what you need to start. And I'm
Yeah,
the sort of person that if I start something, I'm going to keep going. Like I just go hard and I want to do it the best there is possible.
yeah.
Anyway, fast forward like kind of 2 years into the gig, I see I get told that a staff has applied and told me the name of the staff, and she had applied for one of the positions working with the young people, working with the clients on the ground. And I
Mm.
recognized the name, and I called her and I said, "Hey, it's me. Uh, this is this is the company that I
Yes,
told you to join me. Let's
yes,
get started." I mean, I think at that time we'd kind of crossed like 150 staff or something like that,
yeah.
and so already was starting to become a little bit well known. But yeah, it was an interesting conversation. Like
Definitely.
missed an opportunity.
I'm
Um,
sure she regretted when received that call and say, "Hey, this is the guy that I could have, done this gig with, and now I'm applying for a job from him."
yeah, absolutely. I think fast forward now, 4.5 years later, she is working on the ground still, and she loves it. She loves what she does. But I have all these like a massive team, and I don't interact with the guys on the ground very much, even though I really love that work.
Yeah.
And there's such a distance now between me and them, but that
Yeah.
opportunity is missed. So
All right. Before we go into the growth of your business, because it is quite a significant growth from where you started. Now, did you have any doubt when that moment when you decided you want to go into business, as opposed to having the comfort of that check? Because a lot of people do have that sort of they go through that episode. Was there any doubt in your mind that you were going to make it, or not? Or you just decided, okay, it doesn't matter. I'll go into it whether I succeed or fail. It doesn't matter. What was your mindset at that point?
well, I guess I created a bit of a backup plan, right? So um coming out of the Air Force, even so, you got to understand, like the Air Force, the people that are in the Air Force, they love it, right? Because they
Mm,
get paid well, their medical is covered, their housing is covered, they get to travel the world, and they get paid for traveling the world, like literally paid extra to travel the world. So
mhm,
when I was getting out, like I mentioned it to a couple of colleagues at the time, and they were like, "What are you gonna do? Like, why would you do that?
mhm,
Like, this is the most safe, sure thing you've got going. Like, what would anyone do that? Like, no one could fathom that." But I
mhm,
think for me, I respected maybe like my mental health in like the deterioration of my mental health in that space.
Yes.
And no matter what, I wasn't going to stay there. Like I would have rather go and, I don't know, like do another job that paid me half the money
Yeah.
to have my sanity. And so, okay, I'd already made that jump that gives me this level of like, it's actually not that bad, you know, like
Yes.
the job I went into, and yes, like it went from like being an engineer in the Air Force to being like working with people one-on-one and having to provide personal care, like helping people get people shower and all that sort of stuff. And, you know,
Mm-hmm.
for us Africans, like that means nothing, right? But like
Yes.
from, you know, in this part of the world, that's quite a lowly job to do. And it's
Yes.
interesting because I think like in the first month that I was there, there was like quite a few times where I actually earned more doing that, as in what paycheck I got in my bank, more doing that than what I earned in the Air Force. And so
Mm.
I had already like gotten this first like wind of, well, it's not actually, it is possible. And yes, you can actually just jump and and do it for the right reasons, have some faith and belief that you were created for more, you have the ability to produce more,
Mm-hmm.
and anything you set your mind to is possible. And I think then making that leap into like into that business world, okay, well, one of the things that I had to worry about was, well, I have a family,
Mm.
and how can I support my family if I go do a job? I was flying at the time, and like I said, very expensive endeavor. How can I support my family if I don't have money? I mean, I was able to create myself a bit of a backup plan. Like I thought, well, I could do a couple of days a week doing the job. And then
Mm-hmm.
I actually did rethink that at the end. I thought I could do a couple of days doing the job and then do the business on the side. So I can, and then I can slowly but surely, like, if I did like 5 days of work and 2 days of the business, I can slowly but surely like swap that over to 5 days of business and 2 days of work until it was 0 days of work.
Mm.
That was the initial backup plan. But then I'm grateful that, you know, the Air Force, after I exited, provided me essentially with like a 3 months of go and find yourself into any career,
Mm.
that you might like go study, go do something to get yourself into a new career or get back to this career, whatever you need, but you have 3 months to do that and we'll pay for you to do that. And
Mm-hmm.
so I'm thankful that I was able to have access to that kind of opportunity that then freed me up for 3 months to do it. And I gave myself a deadline as well. I was like, if I don't have it done by this time, I'm going to see how it's going in 3 months. And if it's not, like, if I haven't earned a dollar from it, then is it like, am I really going to make a dollar from it? And I'm really thankful. Like, I think by that 3 months mark, I was already like, we were already in a position where it was like, I need to leave my home office, which was essentially my garage, to
Mm.
actually move into an actual building office because I
Yeah.
don't think it was working so well. So I guess, yeah, those are my kind of things that I did to help, which I think it's applicable to really anyone if you're making that leap of faith.
And I suppose you mentioned quickly. You mentioned faith there. Did faith, your faith, sort of a spiritual faith, uh, have any? Did it play in the whole equation?
Yeah, I'm a big believer of the scripture of in Romans, all things work together for good for those that love him and called according to his purpose. For
Mm-hmm.
those that he loved and are called according to his purpose. So I'm like, I've always worn that like a crown on my head. Like I am called according to his purpose, right?
Mm.
So all things work together for good. I just need to put my hand in it.
That's
I'm not trying to do anything dodgy. I'm not trying to do anything that's unscriptural. I'm not breaking any commandments. My aim is to do good in the world and bring God to his world, that he's created. And that's always my intent for everything that I do. And that means I am called according to his purpose. So therefore it should work together for good. Um,
well.
yeah,
Well,
I mean, I
that's
can give you several other scriptures that I based my decision on, in taking that leap of faith, but I think that's one of my key ones that I always utilize. So,
well, absolutely. All right, that's good. And then let's get into you start the business, and within, you said you've been in business, I don't know, for 4 years, and
yeah,
you've managed to grow that big. Give us a bit of an understanding of how you manage that, what were the ingredients for that growth, and how big is your company today?
So let's see. It's how big is it today? We've just crossed. We're heading towards the $40 million revenue threshold now per annum.
40, you
Um,
mentioned?
yeah,
Okay, that's
which
quite a big number.
yeah, it's been exponential every year. Like it's not a linear growth at all. It's like I think first year, which wasn't even a full year because it really started in August. We actually did we completed that year, and I think we were a bit over a million. Oh, sorry, sorry, we're like 130,000, and then the following we're like well over a million, and then we hit like 6 million, and then 12 million, and then like 30 something million. It's it's been crazy. Okay, so the journey when I started, so my wife was there with me. I had some really dear family as well that provided some support within the home to because it's very consuming, right? Like it takes up all of your time, all of your day. And so I launched into it with everything that I had, like all of my abilities within me. One of the key things that I found very earlier on is that if you're going to do something, you need to be the best at it. You can't you can't just do something half and half. And so like I decided I needed to become the master at my new trade and understand everything there is to understand about it. Setting up a company, working out the compliances, all that sort of stuff. You can get people that can advise you on that, but there's a lot of nuances that you will never know if you don't spend some time doing a bit of learning. And you might be the kind of person that doesn't like learning or studying. I love knowledge. I love acquiring knowledge. I can't get enough of reading and listening. And so it was pretty helpful from that perspective. But I spent
Yeah.
a whole lot of time like just reading, learning everything I could learn about it. And right up to the point where I got like my first ever client to sign, right? It was a mom who wants to sign a service agreement for a 18-month old daughter that she wanted me to bring on board. Now that's quite a fun story, right? Because I signed a client to provide occupational therapy to their family, which this little girl. Now, did I know anything about occupational therapy? Hell no. Of course, I don't know anything about occupational therapy. In fact, what I did not realize at the time was that it was one of the most difficult, um, I guess, occupation to find and employ. It was one of the most highly demanded occupation within the health sector at the time because there was so much need for them. So I'm this optimistic guy who's gone out and got his first client after making a bunch of calls and sweet talking a bunch of people to try me out. I'm a new service in the market. And I signed this mom up. And then she asked me the key question. So when do I expect my services to commence? And I said, well, I think your services can commence in 2 weeks. I'll just check with the team. Now, this time when I say the team, I'm saying myself and my wife, maybe and my maybe family member who's at home with us at the time. Like that's the team.
Yes.
So I say I'm checking with the team. I'll get back to you in the next couple of days, but you should be good to start in 2 weeks. Now I was seeing her on a Friday, and so it was going to be on a Friday in 2 weeks. So I'm like, I set out now to look for an occupational therapist. I'm like, cool, this should be easy. I'll just put out some job ads. I'll pay for it. We'll find one real quick. 1 week goes, nothing, not even like a peep squeak. All right, the 2 weeks start. I'm starting to get a bit concerned because you should. So I start like calling all the organizations and asking questions just to like research. And
Yes.
I'm starting to discover you cannot find one of those people anywhere. Like they are freaking hard to find. Like you cannot find them. And
Yes.
every organization that has them, they're already at capacity.
Yes.
And so I'm like calling around now. I'm like by every phone call, I'm getting more desperate. Like, and I'm pretty sure I'm starting to sound very desperate. And eventually, okay, so the days are ticking. It gets to a Friday, right? And it gets to Yeah, it was a Friday. And the following Monday was when I'd confirmed that she was going to have the services start. Friday, I still don't have an occupational therapist. Now I'm kind of losing it. I'm saying to my wife, "Hey, listen, you are an ECT, which is early childhood teacher, which can
Yes.
also provide therapeutic needs to under 8. The girl is 18 months old. You should be fine. Can you do it?" My wife is saying to me, "Well, no, that's out of my comfort zone. I wouldn't be doing that. I think you put yourself in this, so you got to figure it out." So I'm
Yes.
getting real desperate. I get a call from a friend, a colleague at the time, who I was working with. We both work with the same client. He invited me to go to a training for a client. And I said to him, "No, man, I don't want to go to this training. Like, what? No, did you know I'm actually quitting? Like, today's my last day and I don't actually plan on going in. So why would I go to this training with you?" And he says, "Listen, I need you to come with me because my car's broken down. And unlike you, I don't have a backup plan. This is my job and I really need you to take me to it." And I thought, well, all right, I'm that guy who always has to say yes to helping people, right? So I'm like, fine, I'll take you. So I pick him up and we drive to this thing. Now it's like storming, right? It's like getting into storm season. It's raining. We drive to the office. We go in for the training. Now I will say this, right? At this point, I started thinking maybe I can just be an occupational therapist. I'm like, I've done so much reading about who they are and what they do. I'm pretty sure I can pass any degree right now. So I'm going to be an occupational therapist, and
Yeah.
I'm sure she wouldn't even know this. I'm
Yeah.
desperate at this point. Anyway, I go to this event, this training, and it's a big round table. We're sitting there, and the training. Oh, he moves us outside to a car, and the training starts with the gentleman who's providing the training, and it says, "Hello, everybody." It says his name, and he says, I am your I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm here to deliver the training for today." Okay, you got to understand, like, I didn't care about this training. I didn't even want to be here. But then this guy
Yeah.
just said he's an occupational therapist. So my
Yeah.
ears are saying, like, I'm listening. What, like,
Yeah.
what? Okay, let's hear what he has to say. Now he starts his training. And okay, I tell you, right, I've done enough reading to be an occupational therapist myself. Nah, in fact, I've done enough reading to be an examiner of an occupational therapy. And I start asking him questions, and I'm asking him detailed questions, and it's all to do with the actual work he was training us on, but it was super detailed to the point where the manager in the room made a comment and was like, "Listen, I think you are so well educated around this client. I really appreciate that you're on their team. What you're saying is really, really good. I really love your effort and you being here and being so proactive." And I'm there thinking, thank you, no worries at all, thank you. It's not what I was actually doing, was just doing a job interview in someone else's training, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the training, I followed this guy out of the room like a creep. And I'm like just tailing behind him, and he's trying to get to his car because it's raining. And I say, "Hey man, listen, I know that I was asking you a bunch of questions in there, but I'm actually just looking for help at the moment. Is there any chance you can support me with looking after a girl? Does your company have any capacity?" And he gives me the famous answer I've heard over 30 times already, and that was, "Nah, man, we have no capacity." And for whatever reason, after he says that, I thought maybe I can just say to him, "Do you have capacity?" And I asked the question, and he said, "Yeah, no, I actually, I was starting to think that, I might take my Fridays off and start doing some more personal jobs, like taking on work directly myself, maybe starting a small business on the side." And I said, "Man, when were you planning to do that?" And he goes, "Yeah, maybe next Friday." And I said,
Oh.
"Mate, can I be your first client? Because I really got a job and I really need you to look after. Is there any chance you can do this?" And he goes, "Yeah, no, that should be fine." And I'm
Wow.
thinking, okay, either like the heavens have just favored me today,
Yes.
or I am being fooled. Anyway, I followed the guy to his car, like I said, like a creep. He's in his car giving me his number. while it's raining and I'm struggling to type on my phone because it's raining. And I
Yes.
take his number and I get in the car and I'm saying to the friend who asked me to come, and I'm saying, bro, I just got to thank you. You have no idea what you just did today for me. And I'm sending a message and calling my wife. I'm like, listen, I think we may have just found a staff member. And my wife is like, okay, listen, don't get too excited yet, right? He hasn't given you anything other than his phone number. So we
Yes.
got to see first. By the time I get home, I shoot him a message. I ask for more information. He provides everything to me within like an hour. And believe it or not, I'm calling the client that very same night and I'm saying to her, hey, listen, I know that I said that your services will start on Monday or Tuesday, but I spoke
Yeah.
to my team and we can only fit you in on Friday. Can we make it on Friday? And the woman says to me, listen, I don't care because this will be the quickest ever anyone ever got to me for occupational therapy. I've been on a wait list for 6, 7, 8 months now waiting. So like you've been able to give me services in 3 weeks. That's incredible. I can't even believe it. I actually thought
Mm.
when you told me in 2 weeks, I thought you're kind of lying to me, but that's
Mm.
just incredible. And I said, oh, I just did something pretty cool. I just did something that's actually quite unique. So anyway, fast forward Friday, the OT went in, he delivers the services. She calls me the very same afternoon. She's thanking me. She's like, that I don't know where you got that OT from, but he'll be one of the best on your team. Absolutely loved him. He like already I can see improvements. I'm like, what? After one session? And as it will turn out, about kind of 3 months later, I actually asked that occupational therapy to become one of my business partners. 4 years later, he's now one of my business partners, and that's how we added on that branch to the health sports that we provided. I suppose, like, I'm telling that story to say, in terms of the question, and there's a whole length of it to answer because I don't think it's something you can unpack in like 30 minutes of what
Mhm.
got me where we got to. But there were a series of things that happened along the way where there was a whole lot of faith response that I had to give. There was a whole lot of working really hard, and there was a whole lot of even when things like at the 11th hour, right? It's it's the Friday before the Monday, and I'm
Mhm.
finding the OT, and I can tell you what, there has been those moments have repeated themselves over and over and over again in the journey. And every
Yes.
one of those moments, I have taken them and grabbed them with my hand and gone for it. They say there is no risk without reward, and high risk, high reward. Uh, and that's very true, and that's why most people find it difficult to take the kind of risks that a business needs to actually move. A lot of what I do is taking a lot of very big risk that the average person would be like, you're crazy, you might actually lose everything. And I
Mm.
think, yeah, maybe, but well, like, what's the worst that could happen to me, right? I die or go to prison. Those are the worst things that could happen to any person in life, right? And as long as I'm not dead
Yes.
or I'm not in prison, I'm fine. So
Oh,
like I said, a lot to unpack about the journey, and there's some real
yeah.
specific other things that happen. But certainly, that story kind of gives one of the reflection on the key component of I have done a lot of work in taking risk, very calculated risk, but risk nonetheless, and having
Mhm.
faith to take those leaps every step of the way. And I think I do a lot of committing my ways to God, and He makes my path straight. And so whenever I launch into something, and as I can feel the peace about doing it, I know that He's on it, and so I just keep going until I get it done. So I think that's kind of, but yeah, that's kind of the easy way to kind of wrap that up for the amount of time we have today.
I see. Wow, that's good. And I see we're running out of time, but I would love to hear a bit more about that story. But just to finish off, what are some of the advice that you can give to other African Australians who are already in the business or who want to go into business, about what they need to? I mean, what would you advise them in terms of, you know, how they should look at all the whole thing, and how they should manage themselves
Yeah.
and to be able to achieve the sort of outcome that you have achieved for yourself?
Yeah. I mean, they, to two things, and there's a lot of things I could probably give, right? Because like the person's learning journey is quite a lot to unpack in little sound bites. There's
Yes.
really two things I think I can really give today. One will be dress how you want to be addressed, right? Like you need to when I say that, I'm not just referring to physical, your physical appearance, although I think that is paramount, that is quite
Yes.
crucial. I'm referring to also like gaining the right knowledge that you need to be able to speak, and be able to follow through, and that's one of the key components. Then the next component of it is, and I think there's two sides of even that one, get yourself a mentor. Get yourself someone who's actually been ahead of you where you are trying to go, like a step or two, or even
Mm-hmm.
10. Because the good news about that is often they recognize the pitfalls that you might fall into
Mm-hmm.
because they've been there and they've fallen into that.
That's
And there's
right.
something that is really, really crucial about that, because there's no point, Ecclesiastes say there is nothing new under the sun. And so everything that has happened before and will happen again. So someone's done it. Someone
Mm-hmm.
knows that's one of the wisdom books of the Bible, right? Someone's done it, so someone knows about it. And so getting someone to come alongside you, to cheer you on, to actually be real with you, to tell you your ideas are stupid and are dumb, and you should think about it differently. I'm not saying get people that are jealous or want to be you. Like, you want people who are a bit ahead of you in that
Yes.
space. And I think the second component to particularly that mentorship one is, I make it a habit never to do everything. I only do the things I'm good at.
Mm.
And I think that's one of the most crucial part of the things I've learned, to only do what I am good at and find people who are good at their thing to do their thing. Because if you try to be good at everything, it's just not going to work. But if you do the thing you're very, very good at, I think one of the key things that I've learned even in that space is that whatever you have been given the mantle to carry, or whatever you've been given the grace, the wisdom, the yoke, whatever it might be to carry, if you focus on that treasure and really get yourself well rounded and really care for that thing and deliver on it the best you can, you almost can't go wrong, because it's the natural thing that you've been given.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I've evolved over time and I've become really good at other things. I didn't know I was very good at financial management until I started doing financial management and got taught right how to do it from that mentor. And
Mm-hmm.
even now, I have an in-house accountant, right? Like, and I take sound advice from her all the time. I am okay to be led up. I'm not too big for someone. There's this model of 360-degree leadership where you lead wherever you're situated in an organization, you should recognize that as a leader, you will have people that will lead up,
Mm-hmm.
you will have to lead down,
Mm-hmm.
and people will be beside you that could lead you sideways. And
Mm-hmm.
often the mistake that we might make is thinking that we know it, and well, if I got here on this journey, why do I need those other people? What can they tell me that I don't already know? You'd be
Mm.
very, very idiotic to think that way, because most certainly people know things that you don't know. And that's just
Mm-hmm.
the fact. And so I'm very, very okay with people leading me, people that I employ to lead. And I think I spoke about this at the event that we attended not too long ago as
Yeah.
well. I think it's very, very important to recognize that if people are more skilled than you and if they're more competent than you in certain areas, allow them to do that job, and even allow them to lead you on how to do that job.
Mm.
Is a reason we typically want to take advice from a lawyer, right, before we do something. I think you can categorically put that into every aspect of business leadership, from the minute details to the more complex things. You can have people lead you, and you can be comfortable with that. Ultimately, the from a directorial and a corporate act perspective, it all rests on you, and so you got to be wise about the decisions that you make, even when you are being advised. But certainly, there's a key component there that you must be okay with being led, no matter where you are situated in that organization. So those would be my 2 or 4, depending on how you count them, strategies.
All right. Yeah, definitely. No, that's quite a lot of insight there. And very last question is, the industry that you are in, healthcare, is one that is we see a lot of Africans operating into,
Mhm.
and quite a few, including yourself, are quite successful. But there is a lot more who are not able to make it. Even though some people have, there are people who have registered their businesses, they don't know how to get clients. There are those who have started, they don't know how to grow their client base, and a whole host of other compliance issues and all
Yeah.
that. Just as someone in that industry, what are some of the few tips you can give to those who are either wanting to get into this or have started into this industry and they're not yet understand how things work in this?
Yeah, I think one of the most realistic things I could say is that when you actually look at the journey of the actual industry itself, and I'm speaking from the component of what I think you are asking about, which is more specifically the NDIS space.
That's right.
It is worth understanding. So for me, I've gone away from being an NDIS service provider. We are just not at all an NDIS service provider. We're a healthcare service provider. And that is because we are accredited under 7 different funding bodies, federal funding bodies, and we provide services under all of them. And when you're talking about like business advice, like how to stay sustainable, diversify, always diversify. Don't remain with the one thing. But as far as the question is concerned, like within the specific NDIS space, one of the things I do know is that the compliance requirements are increasing quite significantly, as well as the restraint on people being able to provide services the way it's been previously done, because it's been quite liberal. And it's now evolving to become quite tightened, and so certainly what that means is that the flood of people that were able to get in at the earlier stages, and I will say, including myself, that's how like an engineer can get into healthcare, right?
Yeah.
The barrier of entry was quite low.
Yes.
And they're now increasing that barrier quite significantly, and they're doing that strategically, which is squeezing out all the smaller guys. And so what that actually means is that I think from that perspective, you really got to think very carefully if you want to get into this space, because it's not a fun, easy space to get into anymore. It is extremely challenging, extremely demanding. So it's not to discourage you, but it's to open your eyes to know that is what you're getting into, which goes back to one of the things I said before of gaining knowledge, acquiring knowledge, because you're like, there's so much there is to know about this space, and the requirements are ever evolving, that even guys like us, like I have a team of 6 people in my compliance, and we still struggle keeping on top of all the compliance, like no jokes. So certainly you need to gain that knowledge to then situate yourself in the right place. As far as gaining clients are concerned, there are a lot of I guess, and I see them as your starter groups, where they will do referrals to you. And I call them your starter groups because they're very, very good for when you start, like you don't know how to get your marketing right. You don't know how to say, what you need to say to the right people. You don't even know who the right people are to get kick-started. And so going to some of those starter lead generation, I guess, companies that exist like Carista or I guess My Care Space, Kismet, ClickUp, Clickability. There's a lot of them. Those companies are usually quite good to give you your initial client. You sign up with them, you pay a fee, and they might give you your initial client. And through that, you can start to develop relationship with support coordinators, because typically clients will come with that. That support coordinator has 2, 3, 4. Sometimes my support coordinators have 30 plus clients on their books that they manage. So at any day, they might be looking for a new service provider. And again, if you show yourself worthy, you show yourself that you have the right information, you have the right knowledge, you know what it is you're looking for, how to provide really good services, it is very easy for them to then refer to you. But when I do my mentorship around kind of people in this space that do come to me for mentorship, one of the things I always get them to try and work out for themselves pretty earlier in the day is the simple question of why. Why are you doing this? Because that question is important to understand. How are you different from any of it is now, I believe it's 48,000 providers in Australia, and that's just the guys that are registered. There is an equal amount of unregistered guys that are operating, right? So let's say that's a number, let's call that number 60,000 people, right? Let's lower the bar and call it 60,000. You are entering into an industry where you're going to compete with 60,000 people in an arena where the laws and the regulations are tightening up quite significantly. And everyone is on the watch now. There's all of these rhetorics going around providers that are, poor performers, running the system, fraudulent, all of these things going around. You're going to go into that space. Why? Like, what is your why? What sets you apart? Why should a client take your service over mine? I deliver very high quality service. You should see the way my homes are set up. They are dynasties. I go over the top, creating very, very eloquent spaces to provide caring. And if that's what I'm doing, what are you going to do to surpass that? And so that's what you got to understand in coming into the arena. And for each person, that answer is very different. So I'm not about to tell anyone what the answer should be, but I think it's very important to understand your why. Why are you doing this, and what sets you apart from the rest of the 80-odd thousand people that are operating in the space currently? So,
well, that's a very good way of ending this conversation. Emeka, we want to thank you very much for your time to our show, and it's certainly a great opportunity for us to hear from your journey, and I'm sure a lot of people out there who follow us would get a lot of insights that could be helpful in their own journey. We appreciate your time, and hope to have more opportunity. I guess I would have wanted to have a bit more time to talk about even your experience with the Air Force, because I knew that there was a bit more there, but we needed to go into the the business. But we'll probably try to get you on another occasion, because I think there's an element of that structure, whether it's racism or barriers and all that sort of thing that does affect a lot of people like us. But that could be a conversation for another day. For now, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you well for your business. You're already doing quite well, so I'm sure we will continue to do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much, Clyde.
All right. Thank you very much. That's all for now, guys. Thank you for watching the Clyde Sherrati Show. We're always trying to get people to give you very good insight for business, for leadership, for culture of excellence, and all that sort of thing that help us, especially my African Australian folks, to do better, to climb that socio-economic ladder. And it's important that we hear from people who are doing quite well, and that gives us inspiration. Until next time, please stay connected, share this video with your friends and network, and we'll see you again next time. Bye-bye.